This is Bruce Whitfield's Business Week. It's powered by Capitec, the business bank for everyone. It's business without the boring bits.
Capitec is an authorized FSP 4669.
Each week we share just what you need to know to help you understand and better navigate the very confusing, complex and uncertain world in which we live. And on the podcast this week, big question, has Mr. Price finally lost the plot? It's the latest South African retailer to spend billions expanding into Europe, and investors don't like it one little bit. The US Fed has cut interest rates again as inflation shows signs of picking up in the United States. It's a big flag for 2026. And surprising statistics around the performance of the JSE relative to global stock markets. That's all still to come on Bruce Whitfield's Business Week. Well, to Adriaan Basson now, the editor-in-chief at News 24, and what is our final episode for the year from a news perspective, although we will be bringing you some wonderful feature interviews over the next couple of weeks that you won't want to miss. Details on those in a couple of minutes' time. But Adriaan, I want us to reflect on the year as a whole, because I think it's important to distinguish between what is happening in investments and in markets and what is happening in the news cycle. And one of the biggest stories of the year, and will be probably the biggest story of 2026 and possibly 2027, is Donald Trump and the impact that he's had not only on the world, but specifically on South Africa, the tariffs, the tantrums, and of course the what's called the G20 gathering, which happened without the United States a couple of weeks ago. Give me your sense of Trump 2025.
Hello, Bruce. It's so nice to finally crack a nut to be on your show, albeit through talking about Donald Trump, but it's a real pleasure. And it's been an absolute privilege listening to the show every Thursday evening on my drive home in the very hectic Cape Town traffic. So thank you. It's so nice to have you at News 24. Bruce, yes, Donald Trump, think of him what you may, is changing the world and is changing South Africa. In February, we had that famous or infamous executive order he issued to say, terrible things are happening in South Africa. There's the so-called white genocide against Afrikaner farmers. This was followed by a refugee process for people who look like me to now come and live in the United States. I must say those were the biggest framed refugees I've ever seen queuing there at our Tambo airport. And it was a bizarre moment. But, on a serious note, it's impacted our economy. The tariffs, 30% tariffs, of course, great uncertainty over the future of AGOA. We saw plunging exporting, specifically when it comes to vehicles. There was a bit of relief for the exemption for the farmers, with citrus and wine exports. Of course, we sent lots of those to America. But Donald Trump seems to have this bizarre obsession with South Africa. I mean, he can't stop speaking about us. This week, again, he referred to us when he spoke about the US's new refugee policy that will only now accept people who look like me. So it is quite bizarre. We shouldn't be so important in his life. We shouldn't be as important to America. But here we are. I must say, I was at the G20. It was still called the G20, although there were only 19 countries, as you pointed out. And it was quite a proud moment, I must say, Bruce, to have the rest of the world there refusing to boycott our G20, refusing to buy this narrative of a so-called white genocide, and actually agreeing on a declaration at the end of the G20. I think symbolically, that was quite important.
Yeah, completely. I mean, Donald Trump has been very interesting as a case study in terms of his power and his ability to use executive orders, the pushback within the US legal system against the worst excesses of some of those orders, and just how the politics is changing and how, former sort of arch right-wing MAGA Republicans are beginning to split from Donald Trump. And I wonder whether 12 months from now, the conversation we're having is about an emasculated president, a president who's lost the support of his own party and has turned into a lame duck in his second term. We live in hope.
Of course, we have the midterm elections next year in the US, Bruce, which will be closely followed. South Africans also have an obsession with Donald Trump, by the way. We follow what he does, and he does filter through into our dining room tables and debates as well. I mean, I've been hearing of families in the US split around their opinions for Trump while it's happening here as well. But he certainly has an impact on the world. Will it be a turning moment in history? Will it be a blip on history? I'm not certain. I'm not sure we know at this stage. And there's also that famous saying that Trump always chickens out, So he's made a U-turn already on a number of big announcements he's made. But it does place a country like ours with a fragile economy at risk. And in a way, it was probably good for us as well, because our economy and our businesses had to figure out how this new world looks like, find new export destinations. Asia has been very good to us. Europe has been good to us. There's definitely a huge toenadering between the Republic and the European Union. We see their leaders visiting here quite often now, and there's a very friendly relationship with Cyril Ramaphosa and his administration. So, yeah, good things to watch.
Exactly. It's a global realignment that's happening, and the United States has lost control of how that realignment is going to play out. And that's really something that's going to worry the level heads in the United States, those that are keeping those heads below the parapet for the time being. Talk to me about the Madlanga Commission. We've known that the South African Police Service has had some very significant rotten apples in it for a very long time. I'm not too sure that I certainly was aware of just how catastrophic and dysfunctional and cursed and awful the police had become. From nail bars and pedicures, we can make fun of that if we like, but it's actually symptomatic of something far more serious. But a former police minister allegedly taking bribes, Woolworths bags and ShopRite bags of cash changing hands. None of it surprises us hugely because we are quite immune to this sort of stuff. But just that the low level of quality of these people have been put in charge of the country's security for as long as they have. And no wonder there are so many issues in our communities.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to try very hard to find a positive here for you, and I will end with that. But just to say that, if the South African Police Service was a company, it would certainly be liquidated at this point. Closed down, CEO fired, and just get rid of it. Start again.
And the director's thrown in jail, yes.
Let me go to the good point immediately. It's good that it's happening, Bruce. It's good that this is all being played out in real time. It's horrible to watch. It's terrible to watch. It's frightening. It's scary. It's horrific, like Donald Trump would say. But it is necessary. It's necessary that this gets broadcast to the world. It's necessary that the top shot head police honchos who live these comfortable lives courtesy of some of the most dodgy figures in our society are exposed. The question, of course, becomes what happens next. So we will see a wrapping up of the Madlanga Commission in 2026. We know how long it took Judge Zondo to wrap up his commission and those reports to come out, and some of it's still not implemented. Will it be different this time? And I think that's the big question. There's clearly structural issues in the police, Bruce. There's too many generals. There's a complete lack of due diligence and integrity at the highest levels. The fact that Bheki Cele thinks it is completely fine for him to hang out with real criminals with criminal records at fancy hotels and allegedly accept Woolworths bags of cash is a huge issue. It speaks to our moral fiber as a country. It speaks to the way we view the police. It speaks to the role of the police in society. And the police matters, Bruce, because crime is a huge deterrent, not only to life and limb, but also to the economy. Many companies don't want to invest in South Africa because of crime. If you think of illegal mining, it is an absolute scourge. What is the strategy against that? Surely by now we should have had a very sophisticated strategy to tackle that. At the same time, you see private security stepping up, working very closely with companies, with business, and now also with government. The likes of Jannie Durant from Remgro, Neil Froneman, the former mining captain, who's working with the presidency, Operation Vulindlela, and trying to find solutions for crime. And these things must happen in tandem as we use more technology, forensic capabilities, which they are busy building. We have to fix the police. You might remember, Bruce, it was long ago, so that's why you might remember, but Meyer Khan was brought in from SA Breweries.
I have just written Meyer Khan on my piece of paper here because I wanted to raise it with you. One of the toughest corporate individuals I've ever dealt with. One of the most certain, sure-footed, brilliant corporate minds in the world, puts up his hand a bit like Mark Barnes did years later to go and run the post office and said, let me help fix the police. And this is before the wheels truly came off the police, when there was still an opportunity for an internal turnaround. And I think he lasted about a year as chief executive of the police and went, actually, I can't do this. It's beyond me. And that was 20 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's lessons from that. I think the police is one of those organizations. If you walk in there and you didn't come through the ranks, they're going to look at you very strange and probably not listen to you. But we have to find the solutions for this. We have to get the best management experts out there from Harvard or wherever to advise us. I recently read about Georgia, the country, not the state, Georgia. They basically closed down their police service. It was utterly and thoroughly corrupt. And the president said, you all have to reapply for your job. So we may have to go in that direction. Our police service is still structured in that old militaristic way. It still has these regional and provincial competencies where crime doesn't care where you are. The big criminal syndicates and heads of crime networks in South Africa operate across borders of provinces, towns, and even countries. So we simply have to smarten up with that. But let's hope that Judge Madlanga gives us something to work with. I must say I'm very impressed so far with him and his panel. Their questions have been thorough. They've been making some serious policemen sweat and struggle for their words. So I'm quite optimistic at what might come out of this.
And I agree with you completely. Better out than in. These guys have been able to act with impunity for a long time. And once you expose these issues to sunlight, the weeds hopefully will wither in the light. Anyway, I couldn't think of a suitable analogy. I'm too irritated by it. Then let's end up with something which is an incredible upside and possibly the biggest opportunity for the country, because it relates almost immediately to a question I have for you. And that is, people talk about the government of national unity and it's had absolutely no impact. And, it's a lame duck and the DA is being co-opted into a corrupt and venal ANC and blah, blah, blah. That's one part of the conversation. I choose to look at it in a fundamentally different way and say, earlier this year, February, March, the Alliance, the Democratic Alliance and its partners in the government of national unity did make their presence felt, and that was in the pushing back against a 2 percentage point increase in VAT, which seemed like the ANC's only answer to filling the coffers to steal more. That's a bit cynical, perhaps, but
yeah, well, I agree with you, Bruce. That was a major turning point. I think that was, for me and for many people, the moment where the GNU got real, where it grew legs, and where the DA actually showed that they matter. What was very interesting from a political perspective is the reason we had 2 budgets this year in an unprecedented fashion, of course, was because of them and their refusal to accept a 2 percentage points VAT hike. Yep. And I think that the DA won the public sympathy on that. I think that was a big victory for them. John Steenhuisen was actually very good in those negotiations. I remember speaking to him afterwards, saying he walked into a cabinet meeting, started arguing against this, and he had ANC ministers agreeing with him, people like Jose Enzo Ramokgopa agreeing with him in that meeting, that VAT shouldn't be hiked. Astonishingly, a few days later, we hosted Enoch Godongwana, the finance minister, for the budget breakfast on our rooftop. And he admitted that he woke up one morning and decided, this is what we're going to do. We're going to hike VAT with 2 percentage points because he's tired of austerity measures. And it was quite astonishing and dumbfounding. And for me, that kind of represents a bit of the old ANC, Bruce, that old ANC view that we can just do what we want. Well, actually, no more. This was it. The line was drawn firmly in the sand by the DA, and we have to give them credit for that. Some other small opposition parties tried to play politics with the situation, but it really did force Treasury to go back to the drawing board. It forced Godongwana to eat a serious dose of humble pie, go back and come back with a budget that was more palatable to the GNU partners, and I think to ordinary South Africans who were just feeling really gutful, if I may use that word on your show, about the cost of living, about, everything's getting more expensive. And on top of that, the 2% VAT increase. So yes, I think politically, economically, obviously impactful, but politically, it was a big moment. It forced the ANC to accept that they are now the biggest minority party in the GNU formation.
Well, the tone of the medium-term budget policy statement was a fundamentally different tone. Yes, the economy had changed and we've had some interest rate cuts and inflation is under control and the economy is making plans around Donald Trump. The medium-term budget policy statement was a fundamentally different approach from the National Treasury to the ham-fisted first attempt at a budget in February.
It was. And you could see there was, Gonongona was more chipper. He and Edward Kieswetter even spoke on the way to Parliament. The two of them obviously had their little fallout earlier this year with the hot mic incident. And shortly after the medium-term budget statement, we saw what I think will probably become a bit of a seminal piece by A.G. Enthoven, the businessman from the Yellowwood CO, who wrote this piece that's now gone completely viral to say South Africa may have turned the corner, that this may have been the year where actually we've started turning things around. A lot of skeptics, of course, going at him saying, well, you're just trying to prop up the ANC. But he quotes real data. And I mean, knowing him a little bit, I mean, he sits right in the engine room where business works with government to turn things like ports, rails, and of course, Eskom around. Load shedding. What load shedding? What does that mean again? We shouldn't forget these incredible advances that has been made in unsexy places, but important places, the so-called network industries.
All right, let me ask you a question then, because there are bad things that are happening in South Africa, clearly very, very bad things. What's performed better this year in dollar terms, Adriaan? The JSE All-Share Index or the S&P 500. Now, just to remind you, the S&P 500 is dominated by what the companies they call the Magnificent Seven. We've seen the value of NVIDIA this year go from $3 trillion to $4 trillion to $5 trillion. We've seen Microsoft hit $3 and $4 trillion. We've seen Apple and Alphabet also in that sort of ballpark. Not to try and lead you down the garden path on this, but in dollar terms, what has been the best performer? The S&P 500, home to the world's most valuable companies, or the little old JSE?
This sounds like a trick question, Bruce. I know what Donald Trump would answer, so I'm going to say the JSE.
All right, so the all-share index on the JSE. In dollar terms, the S&P 500, as of this week, has returned nearly 18%, which is a very good year. I mean, if you look at the compound annual growth rate, so the average growth rate over the last 35 years, the S&P 500 has done about an average of 10.5% over those 35 years. The JSE all-share index this year, what do you think it has done in dollar terms? Give me a number.
No idea, Bruce.
44%.
Wow.
44%. Now, it's surprising, I think. And here's something that's even more surprising, just to show you how bad things are here. This is data from 2022, and this is a report I found. So it's slightly out of date, but I think this year's performance would make this number even more advantageous. There was a report done by a group of professional investors. The JSE, over the last 60 years, has delivered a return of 10.6% per annum, compounded in dollar terms, versus a 10.4% return by the S&P 500. And that's according to M&G Investments. It's a report that goes back to 2022, which is amazing, actually, to look at it over a 60-year period. We haven't done as well in the last 25 years. And there are too many numbers in here. The S&P 500 between 2000 and 2025 has outperformed the JSE, but not by as much as you think. The return in US dollars for the S&P 500, 345% since the year 2000. For the JSE, 305% in dollar terms. And so for those of, and again, the stock market is not the economy. The stock market is businesses listed on the JSE. The vast majority of them do more business outside of South Africa than in, but these are companies that are headquartered here. Some of them, they are certainly listed on the JSE. Among them is Naspers, which is that great big miracle of Koos Becker's lucky shot on a little business called Tencent all the way back in the early 2000s. But we listen to the news. We'll highlight the horrors of the news, and there have been horrors of the news, the tariffs and Trump and South Africa is bad and genocide. We look at the Madlanka Commission, and it is catastrophically awful, and how the hell did we ever allow that to happen? We look at the budget and the mangling of that, and it's real amateur hour stuff. It really is awful. Yet somehow in the background, there's good stuff going on, and money is being made, and businesses are generating profits, and they're growing their profits, and investors, and that is everybody with a government employees pension fund pension, it is everyone who gets a social grant because the money's got to come from somewhere. And the JSE, tiny microcosm of a much more bigger and more complex ecosystem, is shooting the lights out. And I think that is counterintuitive to many people, yet it's actually part of a far more complex story when you start saying, yeah, the news flow is so negative. Yeah, the news flow may be negative, but we need to know the bad news, because in the background, there are real people doing great things to improve the future.
Is it time for Leila Fourie to become the head of the police, Bruce? That's my question to you that I will leave you.
Why don't you like Leila Fourie? Why would you do that to her?
She's obviously doing a great job at JSE.
Yeah, that's got nothing. Her administration of the JSE was wonderful, but it wouldn't have had a direct impact on the profitability of the companies that make up the JSE. What's interesting, and I think one of the most significant moves this year, was Magda Wierzicka saying, "I'm not giving my money to Britain's Labour Party. I'm coming back to South Africa." And she was, again, I think, traumatized through her work that she did with the Gupta files and all of that sort of stuff, and needed a break. But the fact that she is throwing more of her future into South Africa with Signia and the business that she runs, and it's doing very nicely, results out this week as well. Again, nothing is a binary blimmin' outcome. And I think that's the important thing to remember as we go into 2026, that it's very easy to get trapped into the vortex of negativity about the country, and often you will be wrong on the bigger picture. Adriaan Basson, thank you very much. The editor-in-chief at News 24, making a guest appearance on Bruce Whitfield's Business Week. Well, we love featuring some of the many amazing smaller businesses on the show, and today it's the turn of HintHunt Africa. Dino Paulo owns it. He is an adventurer in his own right. He's a former competitive formation skydiver. Don't think I've ever spoken to one of those before. And a winner of Survivor South Africa. So I know I'm going to have to watch my back on this one, because clearly he is, we're used to moving in mysterious ways. But you opened your first escape room, Dino, and that's the core of your business at the V&A Waterfront more than 10 years ago now, if memory serves. Has it taken off in the way that you expected that it would?
It actually has. It's quite incredible. We were the first escape room in Africa in 2013, October 2013 we launched, well before the major escape room boom globally. And around 2015, the market worldwide just went through this incredible boom, as I said earlier, with thousands upon thousands of rooms opening up around the world. And it didn't quite grip South Africa in the same way, which is a bit sad as an enthusiast, but it also created opportunity. And in that time, we've been able to, hone our skills and learn from the international market and really establish ourselves as the market leader here in South Africa. What made a huge difference to us was moving from or expanding from the old biscuit mill to the V&A Waterfront, which is, of course, in my opinion, the greatest destination we could be in Africa, if not the world. And that's had a hugely positive impact on our business. And since COVID, which was an incredibly tough time for our business as it was for many, many other times, we've seen an incredible growth in our business. And we're really grateful to be in the space that we're in. We love what we do. It's super exciting. And there's always room to grow.
For anyone who's not ever experienced an escape room or knows what an escape room is, just give me an example of the sort of environment it is and what the goal and the aim of the room is.
The pre-prepped pitch would be that we take you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, we lock you away in a very cool themed room where you will have 60 minutes to solve a series of clues and puzzles to escape in time. So that's the pre-prepped line. So essentially, we take groups of up to 6 players. We have multiple themes. Some of our themes include, shipwreck, which is a sunken ship or a ship that's about to sink. We've got a prison break type room called Escape Plan, which is very much set around a prison break theme. Our latest, greatest creation is Marble, which is a superhero spoof, which recently won an international award. So we've got these many, many themed rooms, and within this room, you will have 60 minutes to go on an adventure. The story unravels. You become the main characters in this adventure, but you are, at its core, solving clues and puzzles along the way, and the objective is to escape. So it becomes quite intense. It's great for the adrenaline. Like you said, I mean, I've played Survivor. I'm a competitive skydiver, so adventure, puzzles, games, adrenaline is very, very high on my list, and Escape Room still does that for me in a very different way. So definitely gets the heart racing.
My kids have done escape rooms at the waterfront, and they've absolutely loved it. And I think one of them was definitely the shipwreck one. And it became, certainly in the aftermath, the telling of the story, it was an incredibly intense experience, because you go into an environment and you suspend belief. You actually put yourself into, and if you immerse yourself in it, you start believing that you're actually in trouble in this environment.
So the word you use there, immerse, that's exactly what we are. We're immersive experiences, right? And one of the great things about our experiences is the one time that people disconnect. We strip you of your cell phones, your devices, you put them at the door. People are often reluctant to do so because we are, myself included, quite addicted to our tech and our devices and connection and whatnot. And after about 5 or 10 minutes in the room, once you've been properly onboarded and you figured out why you're there and you've locked in on this mission, you get properly immersed in this environment, and it does become... it does feel very real, and that's part of the beauty of it. And that's what we aim to be, is an immersive entertainment company.
No, it's astounding. What are the most extreme experiences? Because this isn't only aimed at kids, of course. It's sort of team building exercises and team exercises and forcing people into an environment where they have no choice but to work together and collaborate, rather than they might sort of be pulling each other off the greasy corporate ladder. What is the sort of feedback that you get from companies in particular when they bring people who should be adults into that environment?
It's incredible. So, man, the psychology behind team dynamics in an escape room is unreal, right? It's so interesting. We've actually just partnered with an industrial psychology company called Unframed, and they're doing the corporate experiment, where they're actually utilizing our escape rooms to analyze, high-level executive teams. But so I digress. But it is a huge. We have a huge following in the corporate team building space, because Marcus of Cape Town Mag, he's got this term. He says he calls it the great leveler. These corporate teams come in, and if you think of a typical hierarchical structure of secretary, assistant, etc., up to CEO, entering a room. And this experience actually has a way of stripping titles from people and reminding you that every person has value to add. Everyone's got a particular skill set. And teams that perform well are the teams that communicate, collaborate, and lean into each other's skill sets, right? And we often find, like, the CEO might want to grapple with a problem and not be beaten by a problem, and they struggle with a certain challenge for 3 to 4 minutes, and out of frustration eventually give up, hand it over to somebody else, and they solve it within seconds. And the message there, or the reminder there, is that everyone in your team, no matter what level you're performing at, has their value to add. So we get incredible feedback, and we do have a number of corporate clients whose delegates come here under somewhat duress, because it's another team building day or this, and they don't even want to be here, or they think it's for kids when it's actually not. It's aimed at adults. And a lot of the feedback, a lot of our reviews go like, they were pleasantly surprised how involved they are. A lot of our reviews are like, this is amazing, didn't expect it to be so great, had so much fun, coming back with friends and family, And I think because it's so centered around fun, we're able to break those walls down, get people to drop their guard a little bit, allow their true selves to come forward, enjoy it a little bit, engage with colleagues, friends, family in a way that they don't usually allow their natural character traits to come to the fore. So it's really such a cool industry, and it's such a cool experience on so many levels.
I mean, you've done Survivor, you won Survivor. It is the ultimate in strategy, and occasionally you behave in ways that your parents might not be entirely proud of you when you are, manipulating your way to be the survivor. I wonder if there are activities have there been incidents in the room where people have, perhaps lost friendships, because it can, I'm sure, in the heat of the moment, lead to some fairly vigorous interaction.
It's quite funny. So family dynamics is a really interesting one, and you can very quickly see underlying tensions that come to the fore with comments like, "Oh, you always," or "you never do," or there's this little frustration and these little remarks, and you're like, "Oh, something's brewing underneath," So it does expose relationship dynamics in a very interesting way. And I mean, you talk about me being competitive, survival, whatnot. I mean, I used to be an absolute bulldozer because I'm a bit of a control freak. I'm highly competitive. I want to be involved in absolutely everything, but I've got a short attention span. So I like bulldoze, take something, take over, want to figure it out, get bored after 30 seconds, leave like destruction and chaos in my wake. And I've actually learned a lot about myself in that. I'm no perfect candidate either. So, I went from a space of only being able to play escape rooms with my wife to now being acceptable in a team environment. I've had to train myself and learn to curb that. And you see that in a lot of dynamics, actually, like the people who are natural leaders, people who are control freaks, people with, like I say, underlying tension comes to the fore in big ways. It can be quite entertaining, but for the most part, because the rewards, because games are designed to be rewarding, to give you those, what we call aha moments, you struggle and overcome this problem that was, a few moments ago feeling a little bit frustrating, and then you have that breakthrough moment, is reveal, and you all feel good about it, and everybody comes together and feels good in that moment. So it is designed to be rewarding at the end of the day.
Well, if this holiday season, the family Monopoly game doesn't cause enough fights, there's another option for you. Dino, thank you for chatting. The co-owner of HintHunt Africa, the magic of being in an enclosed space with people who annoy you. I think but get that for your friends and family and see who's still talking to each other afterwards.
Why pay more to receive international payments? With Capitec, it's 50 Rand every time. And when you send, it's only 175 Rand. So you keep more Rands in your account with clear fees and no surprises. Do it on our app. It's easy, fast, and safe. From making payments to getting money, international payments are simple with us. Bank on better international payments with Capitec. Capitec is an authorized FSP 46669. Conditions apply.
Your grandparents would have told you never put all your eggs in one basket, and they were right, particularly when it comes to investing. Warren Ingram is certified financial planner. As with eggs, investments should also not be in one basket, Warren.
What you want to do when you're investing is to say, well, how many companies are there in the world that look like an Enron, that look like a Steinhoff, that actually implode entirely? And what you want to do when you're investing is you want to avoid, let's call it the Russian roulette risk. You want to be in a position where you've got investments that are going to grow, but nothing that's going to get to the point where it blows up your entire financial position. And I think the only way I know, maybe I lack imagination, but the only way I know to do that is to take my few eggs, spread them across a few different baskets around the world and across different kinds of asset types. So when you're investing, make sure that not all of your money is invested in one country. Even if you believe America is the greatest investment market in the world, allocating all of your money to America creates the opportunity to miss out on India as a thriving economy maybe for the next decade, and what happens in Japan if they're reforming themselves. So you want to be invested across many different geographies. At the same time, you don't want all of your money invested in shares. You want some exposure to property companies, to bonds, to cash, etc. Because by blending different kinds of assets, what happens is you get allocation to investments that might grow at different times. So when the stock market is falling apart, you might own some investments in bonds, and bonds might do well. Equally, the only thing that might be holding your investments up at a point in time will be cash, because everything else is down. So making that spread decision is very key across different asset types. And then, as I said, across geographies. And be humble enough to say, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what the next best economy will be. And allocating all your money to India because the guy said it on the podcast might be the worst thing to do. Allocating some money to India while you allocate more money to other countries may be a very good call. And that would be the one I would make.
And refer back to the FOMO episode, because you've just got to look at something like Monster Energy drink, for example. $1,000 20 years ago is $2 million today. You go, oh, if only I had done that. I must find the next Monster Energy drink, or the next Facebook, or the next Apple, or the next Netflix, or Google. Whatever the hottest thing is today is not going to be the hottest thing tomorrow. Of that, you can be absolutely certain. And the odds of you discovering it, Warren, are negligible.
And if you feel the temptation to chase today's winner, whether it's Nvidia shares or the next crypto coin, doesn't matter what it is. We're not saying don't do it. What we're saying is take a little bit of money and allocate it to that, while you then have a spread of assets, and everything else that's available to you, so that you do participate in the ride. If there is a ride, if it blows up, which unfortunately will be more regular, then at least it's blowing up with a small portion of your money. And the boring stuff continue to grow and will keep you on path to your financial freedom days.
What's the action we can take to really appreciate its power over time?
Do some reading online just to understand a bit more around diversification. The more you read about diversification, the more you'll understand that it's probably the best decision you'll ever make. And then secondly, review your portfolio of investments to make sure that you have some diversification.
Warren Ingram, who is a certified financial planner. The time, sorry we've gone over. I know I promised to try and do it in half an hour, but it's been so interesting. I've wanted to share all these lovely stories with you. I've seen this quote often attributed to Abraham Lincoln. Certainly it is used by the legendary 1980s business thinker Peter Drucker. The best way to predict the future is to create it. It's a wonderful quote. And as we were reflecting with Adriaan Basson earlier on, just South Africa isn't home to binary conditions. You can have disastrous government and superlative investment returns. You can still achieve amazing things. And that is a great way to introduce what we're doing over the next couple of weeks. And as the news cycle slows down a bit, we've invited some great leaders onto the podcast for longer interviews as to what they're up to. So next week, a former Standard Bank executive, a man called Lincoln Mali, chatting about Bank Zero, the bank that his business, Lesaka Technologies, has just bought. It was built by former FNB executives. But the real reason for having Lincoln on the podcast, it brought tears to my eyes. It will bring tears to yours in the very best way. What he is doing for rural and township rugby is nothing short of amazing. I bumped into him on one of my many international flights this year while he was bringing a rugby team named after his father, the Mzwanele Mali 15. He was taking the team to the UK. And these kids are still being talked about. One of the most expensive private schools in Britain called Brighton College, and in a town called Seven Oaks, where they won the hearts and minds of their opponents and the parents with whom they stayed. And Lincoln Mali tells the story. And my conversations on rugby are generally quite short. However, this is a conversation you need to hear about the power of sport to transform opportunities and also to build character and to build a future, not only for the players themselves, but for a country as a whole as well. Sport bringing hope to South Africa at the very highest levels and through the extraordinary tale of what Lincoln Mali is achieving. It's an evergreen episode, but you are going to want to end your here on a high note. Catch Lincoln Mali, my favorite conversation in a long time. That's it from Bruce Whitfield's Business Week. Thank you very much for listening. Longer form interviews coming and keeping you company throughout the holiday season. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Bruce Whitfield's Business Week, the podcast that respects your time and your intelligence. Okay, it respects your intelligence more than your time this week. For that, it is my fault entirely, but I've had too much fun. Thank you for listening to the Business Week on News 24. It's powered by Capitec, the business bank for everyone. For now, bye-bye.
Capitec is an authorized FSB 4669.